and welcome everybody. And today we are starting the new series of the Gambit Guide. And I'm going to speak about the FriedLiver Gambit in the two knights defense. As you remember, we choose e4 as our main weapon in our white's opening repertoire. And after e5, we already covered the Danish gambit after d4. Indeed, many of you would prefer to play knight f3. And also here we covered that after knight c6, which is the most logical continuation, black protects the pawn on e5 and also increasing the control over the center square on d4. White is having a few alternatives on the third move. And we have bishop b5, Ray Lopez, classical Ray Lopez. And instead of bishop b5 also we can move d4, which leads to the Scotch game or even Scotch gambit after e takes d4 and c3. And also we have opportunity to play knight c3, which leads to the 3 knights or even 4 knights defense in case of knight f6. Indeed, the main and most direct move in such situation is bishop c4. We know that after bishop c5, white is having very sharp and dynamic Evans gambit after b2 and b4. So this we already covered in our previous lecture. But what to do in case of knight f6? One of the most famous and most important openings, which called the two knights defense. There is no doubt that the two knights defense is one of the oldest openings we know. And it's also one of the most complicated tactical ones. So black, without bishop c5 immediately trying to counter-attack white's center, also takes more control over the d5 square. David Bronstein suggested that these opening lines two knights defense should rightly be called the Chigorin's counterattack, since at the end of the last century the legendary Russian chess player added a great deal to the theory of this opening. Also, great credit for developing the theory and practice of this opening must go to the old masters, Steinitz, Chigorin, and of course Dr. Tarar, who said that in that position after knight f6, knight g5 move is a move of novice player. So this knight g5 move, one of the main continuation in the two knights defense. So after knight g5, this move called FriedLiver attack, white immediately intends black's weakest spot in the opening, the f7 pawn. Instead of playing knight g5 immediately, white is having, of course, more continuation. Of course, the most natural is to play knight c3, covering the e4 pawn. Indeed, after knight c3, white is losing his initiative after the great counter-sacrifice. Knight takes e4. So only this knight takes e4 move puts the end to the white's attempt to achieve any advantage in with the standard methods after the black's third move, knight f6. So after knight takes e4 is a temporarily piece sacrifice. Knight takes e4 and d5. Black is achieving very good position in the center, and all white attempts to create attack doesn't work, unfortunately. So black is getting very nice position. So since then, knight takes e4 called just a strong move, because knight c3 is not possible, so white cannot continue developing the normal way. So d3 leads to the standard situation, a bit slow development, which mostly reminds us a bit the Steinitz setup in the Ruy-Lopez, like after bishop b5. After d3, black simply could develop his bishop on c5, and more or less position is approximately equal. So white is not pretending here on much, since white is not having more control than black has. So that's why knight g5 is one of the most important moves in such a situation. Additional option for white is to play d2, d4, which we call the Morphy attack. And this also leads to the quite complicated situation after e takes d4. But later on we will study a bit more outcomes, what exactly happened in these lines. But first of all, and today, anyone who enters the dark territory of the two knights defense must be well prepared for the amazing complications after knight g5. There is a long story about this energetic attempt. Black has a few alternatives how to prevent white from capturing black's pawn on f7. Except the d5, which we call the main line, main defense, black is having very sharp counter attack, which was found like 100 years ago by Traxler. So, and this called the bishop c5. So this is extremely sharp position, and still theory doesn't know how to evaluate this situation after bishop c5. Anyway, today I would like to stick to the d5 move. And d5 is the classical situation which happened in the two knights defense FriedLiver attack. So after e takes d5, which of course obvious move, this is the first critical position. So white taking a pawn on d5, and the assessment of this line is so far from being obvious. It looks like black has to capture the pawn after knight d5. And if you ask beginner or intermediate player, many would say, of course, knight takes d5, so great position. Black is attacking at the same time white's knight on g5, having quite simple development for all his forces. So bishop could come to c5, second bishop is reaching another diagonal after bishop f5. Black is also controlling the quite good center. All this is very nice, but it's easy to see how vulnerable is the f7 pawn in addition to the hanging the d5 knight. It offers white the exciting opportunity to come up with the following beautiful resource. Knight takes f7. This is the first and most important point in the whole line called the FriedLiver attack. So only after knight takes f7 we understand that white is not going just to play positional chess. We are going for the very sharp gambit line in which black is having for a long while the extra piece or even extra rook in many lines. We will check it now. And white is long-term advantage, development advantage, thanks to the bad position of the black pieces. So after king takes f7, queen f3. This is a key idea involving the positional sacrifice of the knight. Thanks to suspended position of the d5 knight, white gains a tempo and seizes the initiative. King e6. Seems like the only continuation. All other moves are losing immediately. First of all, king e g8 will be met by bishop takes d5 and checkmate is coming. Queen f6. White is just winning back the piece, keeping extra pawn with no any compensation after bishop takes d5, so just free piece. King e8 cannot be called the counter-attack because after bishop takes d5, white is intending mate on f7, which prevents black from playing moves like knight d4. So queen f7, and this is a checkmate. So, to conclude everything, we can that king e6 is pretty forced line. Black has to support the knight on d5. As a result of the sacrifice, black pieces are losing their harmony. The king on e6 obstructs the development of the bishop on c8. Besides, white develops the knight b1, winning another tempo. So knight c3, second critical position. White takes aim at the knight on d5 and increases his development advantage. So black instead thinking about the counter-attack has to look how to protect his knight on d5. From the first sign, the position looks extremely dangerous for black. Despite being a piece up, black's position hasn't enjoyed the great popularity. The reason is quite easy to explain. I don't see any comfortable way for black to get rid of white extremely dangerous bishop on c4. Indeed, black is having extra piece. So after knight c3, black is having two alternatives. So one is to play knight b4, not just protecting the knight on d5, but also counter-attacking white's pawn on c2, for king, the king and also rook on a1, so getting even more material advantage. So it looks like white has to forget about the d5 knight and to care for the c2 pawn. Is it right? I know that in many books here, white's main recommendation is to play something like queen e4, also covering the c2 pawn, also intending to play d4, intending to play f4, and after fourth line c6. So that main idea, of course, of knight b4. So black is getting some time to support the knight on d5 with its pawn. After a3 and knight a6, everything quite forced. We reach a position where black somehow succeed to avoid an immediate disaster. I would say even more, if you start checking this position with the assistance of your friends or coaches or even some computer softwares, you might even come up with a conclusion like, okay, not sure if white is having enough compensation for a piece. Has white gone wrong? Look at the next important attacking principle, which you already studied. You must be very careful before starting an attack. But once you have started, you must go on as hard, as fast as you can. This is even more important if you realize you shouldn't have started the attack quite yet. If you try to back out, you will only make matters worse. So white has to play very, very energetically already in this position. So queen e4 I cannot recommend you. And when I was like 11 years old, this position would happen in one of my games. My thoughts were, okay, black's king is so naked. Let's send the knight b4 to a1 and my attack would flow easily to the next level. So I made the decision to sacrifice the whole rook. Funny enough, even today, this a3 move hardly called the best reaction for white. Indeed, I don't see any opportunity for black to survive here after a3. So black is almost forced to capture on c2 with a check. King d1, so white is intending his knight on c2, force black to capture on a1. And this is a position I was dreaming about. Now white could eliminate the knight on d5 and to exploit the ugly position of black's king on e6. However, white has to play very carefully. Of course, many of us would think about trying immediately to play bishop takes d5. But after king d7, black is threatening to play queen f6 and trade the queens. There is no clear way to take the advantage of the bad position of the black king, even after queen g4, king d6, queen b4, and c5. Somehow we lost track. Instead, thinking about winning, white has to fight for a draw. That's why, instead of bishop takes d5, knight takes d5 move is much more imposing. White eliminates the knights, keeping the discovery check as an option. So knight could jump now to c7, to b6, to f6. So white is really increasing his advantage. So as we know from Dr. Tarash, the threat is stronger than execution. So black's need to move his king out of the e6 square, and it's obligated to set out light some journey. So where we go with the king? So black king has to start his marching out of this bishop c4 I. So of course, one of the most natural opportunity here is to play king d7. Since king d6 doesn't seem to be any better after d2 and d4, so white is immediately open up the center and ready to bring extra piece in the attack after e takes d4, bishop f4 check. King d7, that move was played in my game. Once again, I spent here a while trying to find what is the best way for my pieces to create a decisive threat over the black's king, which is still stuck in the center. And I found quite strong continuation. Rook e1, so rook also coming into the game. Black has an ocean of moves, but it's pretty hard to solve his problems. More or less, black has two alternatives. So one is to play c6, which happened in the game. Unfortunately, this move is leading to immediate disaster after queen f5 check. So my opponent was really surprised because black king cannot go to e8 anymore. After queen takes e5, the checkmate is coming very soon. So the only chance is to go to d6. Indeed, queen takes e5. That's why we moved our rook to e1. After queen takes e5, king c5. I looked a bit to this position and finally the maiden idea came to my mind. Knight c7 check, discovery check. So black has two alternatives, or to capture with the king. King takes c4, which will be met by nice checkmate. Queen c3, pay attention. So black king cannot leave the center of the board. So knight from c7 controls the most important square. So no escape. And in case of king b6, white is finishing the game with another mating move. Knight takes a8. So great knight came to checkmate black's king. So look at that. Knight came from c3 to d5 to c7 and finished his journey on a8 with a checkmate. So other alternative for my opponent, instead of playing c6, trying to attack my knight on d5, was to protect the pawn on e5. So even also bishop d6 move doesn't solve any problem. Indeed, white, once again, like in all gambit lines, has to be very, very careful. Bishop b5 check is the best continuation. Force black to play c6. Now, queen f7 check. No any defense except bishop e7. And now we are having very nice move. Look at that. Queen f5 check. So white is continuing his attack with the powerful moves. King d6. Why king d6? After king e8, queen takes e5. Unfortunately, black cannot touch the knight on d5. Otherwise, after c takes b5, knight takes e7, black's king is made in net. So no way to save the game. So after queen f5 check, black king must go forward. King d6, only chance. Queen takes e5 check. King d7. Knight takes e7. Getting rid of main defensive piece. So now we are threatening once again queen e6. C takes b5. And in this position, looks like finish is so close. Once again, we have to be very, very careful. And to find this move, lifting the rook, we are third rank. And black is completely hopeless against rook d3 check. So white is still playing with rook down, but black is having completely losing position. So after rook e3, rook d3 is coming. Let's say what black can do. Queen c7 will be met by rook d3 and the queen is gone. King e8, queen takes c7. What else? If we try moving the rook, let's say rook f8, that white is just simply playing. Rook d3 check. King e8, and of course we can now play something like knight f5 and then queen take g7, or simply winning the queen after knight c6 and then continue with knight takes d4. Game is over. Black is completely lost. So if we back to the critical position which happened after my move rook e1, that really to say already after more than 20 years when I started once again to analyze this position, and I would like to remind you that that game was played in around early 80. So I still can find any solution for black after rook e1. Black's position extremely dangerous. So I tried to analyze more carefully the outcome of king d6 move in this position. So try to solve the black's problem. Indeed, even king d6 doesn't help black. After d4, white's attack is just destroying black's position. advising the queen's pawn, creating the threat d takes e5, almost force black to play c6. And after d takes e5, only move is king e6. It looks for a while, for a moment, that white has spoiled everything. The knight is pinned, look at that. And black's king got a very good cover, the white's pawn on e5. But here, white comes with a brilliant strike. Look at that. So we are not playing not queen g4 check, which could be met by king f7, not bringing the bishop, but funny move, king e2, intending to bring the rook into the center. After c takes d5, white is playing rook d1, and having a rook and a piece down, suddenly there are no defenses against the final mating attack. White is completely winning, so black's king on a6 has no way to escape. For instance, after queen b6, we just simply quick queen takes d5 check and queen f7 checkmate. What else? King e7 doesn't help. Simply after bishop g5, white is completely winning. Last try could be something like queen a5, but then white is just simply playing. I can play even rook takes d5, also keeping completely winning position. Queen, let's say a4, and black will be mated very soon. Rook d6, king takes, and for instance, this is made after queen a4. So black's king cannot find any safe place on the board. So after we moved black's king to e6 already in the opening, thanks to our sacrifice on f7, black hardly ever could find the good protection, good shelter for its king. So after rook d1, after I found this move, I was very happy. So black has no any solution, no any defense against the checkmating attack. So once again, gambit line show its powerful energy. So today we just started to learn about the FriedLiver attack and the two knights defense, and of course we are going to continue looking more great opportunities for white of how to play in the position after the best defense, of course, knight c6 to e7, which we call today the main continuation in the FriedLiver attack. Thanks for everybody for watching, and see you on the next time. If you have any question regarding the FriedLiver attack or any other question, you can visit my website www.chesslessons.wordpress.com and ask your question. I will be happy to help you. Follow my second lecture on the FriedLiver attack next week. Thank you. Bye.